We win our fantasy leagues in the late rounds of our drafts with the sleeper running backs and wide receivers. Last year, we delivered Nico Collins as one of our favorite sleepers. Let's not look at the other guys on that video because they were certified bums. But we gave you the sleeper in 2023 at the wide receiver position. Let's try to do that again in 2024. First guy I want to talk about, Josh Palmer of the Los Angeles Chargers. Going at wide receiver, 55, average draft position, 147 according to Fantasy Pros. Let's talk about the clear elephant in the room with this position. 395 vacated targets from this Chargers offense from a year ago. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler all departed this Chargers offense. Palmer is the last guy remaining that has caught a pass from Justin Herbert in his career. Do not bring up Quentin Johnston. I already mentioned certified bums. Over the last two seasons, in games that either Mike Williams or Keenan Allen missed, Josh Palmer is getting over 8 targets a game. And in 3 games Keenan Allen missed last season, he's getting over 70 receiving yards to go along with 5 catches. And this is just as Palmer is only 24 years old, so we might be seeing him enter his prime in the National Football League, giving a prime opportunity in this Chargers offense. Yes, they're going to be very run-heavy under new head coach Harbaugh, and Herbert is dealing with a serious foot injury, but someone is going to catch passes in Los Angeles. Why not look to the guy that has the most chemistry and experience with Justin Herbert and Josh Palmer? Ladd McConkey should be a decent player in fantasy, but I want to bet on the cheapest option in this offense, Josh Palmer, who on his own has had some pretty decent efficiency numbers. Last season, he was top 40 in yards per route run. Not only that, he's top 20 in yards per reception and yards per target. With Keenan Allen and Mike Williams gone, I expect Josh Palmer to be the focal point of the passing attack, to go along with an upgraded offensive line, a team that's going to want to run the ball. Josh Palmer could solidify himself as a very respectable fantasy option that you don't need to spend any sort of valuable draft capital to acquire. Going this late in drafts, he's definitely worth a dart throw at the end of your drafts. Next guy I want to talk about, Jaxon Smith-Njigba of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this is a second-year wide receiver who didn't have the best rookie campaign. It wasn't horrible for Smith-Njigba. It obviously wasn't as prolific as the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua rookie seasons we've seen recently, but still a decent year. You have to consider this Seattle Seahawks team were ranked dead last in pace of play. They ran the fewest offensive plays in the entire National Football League on a per-game basis. That ideology stems back from Pete Carroll being the head coach. They want to slow the game down, play defense. Now they bring in an entire new head coaching regime. Offensive coordinator from the University of Washington, Ryan Grubb. He's a very creative play caller. We saw what he was able to do in Washington with that offense, led by Michael Penix, Roma Dunze. They knew how to air the ball out. And I believe some of that philosophy is going to translate to the Seattle Seahawks offense with the wide receivers they have. And I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba is the best value in that wide receiver room. Main competition for Jaxon Smith-Njigba, a slot wide receiver, is going to be Tyler Lockett. But at the end of the season, Lockett's going to be 32 years old, and we've already seen 3 straight seasons of declining numbers for Tyler Lockett in receptions, yard per reception. And last season was the first time in 5 years he's under 1,000 receiving yards, which is no surprise for a guy, like we mentioned, at the end of the year is going to be 32 years old. This is where we start to see these wide receivers completely fall off a cliff. I think Smith-Njigba has the ability to overtake him clearly in this offense and be a very productive player. We saw it last year. The snap percentage for JSN progressively increased as the season went along, which is understandable for any rookie wide receiver getting acquainted in that offense. His numbers, his percentage on the field is going to go up as the season progresses. While he was on the field, some of the metrics I want to focus on for JSN were pretty impressive. He was number 6 in separation yards, so he's shown the ability to get open. Not only that, he's also ranked 21 among all wide receivers in yards after the catch. So he has that run after the catch ability like we desire in fantasy, which can take this guy from a solid fantasy player to a league winner alongside DK Metcalf on the outside. I think in this new scheme, they're going to be more up-tempo, not run the least amount of plays on a per-game basis in the National Football League. I think JSN, second-year wide receiver out of that 2023 draft class where he was the first wide receiver off the board. I think he has the ability to be a very productive fantasy wide receiver that you're getting after pick 100 in your draft, which qualifies him to be a sleeper according to our standards. Next guy I want to bring up, Khalil Shakir. This is a very similar argument that I had for Josh Palmer. It's just what is left in this Buffalo Bills wide receiver room. Now, they do draft Keon Coleman, a second-round wide receiver. Is he going to be good? Maybe, maybe not. He definitely should step into a very high workload this year with Josh Allen. But Khalil Shakir, one of the only guys that has chemistry with Josh Allen on this team in that wide receiver room. Curtis Samuel and Keon Coleman already dealing with injuries heading into the season. With over 240 vacated targets at the wide receiver position between Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, Josh Allen's going to throw the ball down the field. We know what kind of quarterback he is. Let's look at what Shakir did while Steph Diggs took a massive step back at the end of last season. After week 8, Khalil Shakir was the number 1 wide receiver in yards per target at over 13 yards. While he's going at wide receiver 50 off the board, I think there is a chance Shakir establishes himself as the number 1 option alongside Dalton Kincaid for Josh Allen. I'm going to take the young guy with some chemistry, with a great quarterback in Josh Allen, as a sleeper any day of the week, how late you're getting him in drafts, especially if we looked how he performed at the end of last year when he's giving an opportunity to get on the field. Next guy I want to talk about, Michael Wilson. You're basically getting him free in your fantasy drafts. At wide receiver 68, number 2 wide receiver in Arizona is completely free in most of your drafts. I don't really understand. This guy isn't just coming off the streets. He's a 3rd-round wide receiver out of the University of Stanford, so he does have that pedigree coming into the NFL. Last year, when he was healthy, he was getting right around 50 receiving yards a game through 8 healthy weeks. Not only that, he was top 10 in average depth of target, pushing the ball down the field. He can get open. While the numbers don't jump off the page, we have to consider the quarterback play he was dealing with. Josh Dobbs did have a good run in Minnesota, but we clearly saw that come to a screeching halt at the end of the season. Michael Wilson was actually ranked the 97th wide receiver in target accuracy. So there were 96 wide receivers who had passes thrown to them more accurately than Michael Wilson in 2023. I expect that to change with former number 1 overall pick Kyler Murray being healthy for the majority of 2024, hopefully. And we saw this on a small sample size at the end of the season. With 2 healthy games with Kyler Murray, Wilson was averaging 65 receiving yards to go along with a touchdown in one of those 2 games. So we've seen a little bit of a chemistry here between them from last year. And as the number 2 clear option for Arizona, Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson on the outside, to be able to get him completely free with so much upside is definitely an appealing selection for me. We have to look at Zay Jones, who Arizona brings in. He's already suspended for 5 games. He's going to miss. And even when Zay Jones comes back, how good do we think he's going to be? Personally, I think Zay Jones is complete dust at this point. Last year when playing, he was outside the top 80 in yards per route run, while Michael Wilson was inside the top 60 in both yards per route run and target separation. So with some added quarterback play in Kyler Murray, I expect Michael Wilson, obviously the target accuracy is going to go up. With a guy that showed a little bit of productivity with what they had at the quarterback position last year, I think we could see Michael Wilson outperform his ADP significantly, especially when it's as low as wide receiver 68 off the board according to Fantasy Pros. Sign me up for the 2nd-year wideout out of Stanford. Next guy is Courtland Sutton. Now, I don't think Courtland Sutton has the ability to win leagues like some of the other wide receivers on this list, but I think he's just going too low in fantasy drafts. Current ADP is wide receiver 47 off the board, whereas he finished as wide receiver 38 the past 2 seasons. So you're getting a little bit of a discount on him there. Not only that, he loses his top target competition in Jerry Jeudy, who signs with the Cleveland Browns. Yes, he does lose his quarterback in Russell Wilson, but I don't think anyone at this stage in his career is going to argue that Russell Wilson is some superior talent at the quarterback position, facilitating wide receiver fantasy production. Sean Payton goes out and drafts Bo Nix, his guy, in this draft. Now, there are arguments to be made about Bo Nix being a good quarterback, but Sean Payton loves him. And the last guy that Sean Payton loved at the quarterback position just so happened to be Drew Brees, and they had 15 years of being a top 3 offense in the National Football League with the New Orleans Saints. So whatever you think about Bo Nix, Sean Payton believes in him, and I can't foresee him being a significant downgrade to what Russell Wilson has been the last couple of seasons. And Sutton has been sneakily a top red zone guy in the National Football League. Last season, he was top 12 in red zone targets. Not only that, top 5 in touchdown passes at 10 touchdowns for the 2023 season. So maybe you're predicting a fall off at that touchdown number, but still, the betting lines on Courtland Sutton are projecting him at 800 receiving yards. This is equivalent to what Deebo Samuel's line is at. Obviously, Sutton is not going to get the rushing upside that Deebo provides. To have the same receiving yard line as a Deebo Samuel, to have similar projected lines as Keenan Allen, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, T. Higgins, I might add, to be in the same sort of tier as these other guys, according to Vegas sportsbooks, tells me that Courtland Sutton, clearly the number one for Denver, that he's going to have a pretty productive season. Maybe not a league-winning season in this Denver offense, but still outperform this wide receiver ADP 47 overall at the wide receiver position. I think there's very little risk to taking Courtland Sutton as a wide receiver for your fantasy teams, especially with a rookie quarterback that we could see maybe outperform what people project for him this year. I think Courtland Sutton is a very safe pick with a little bit of upside in your fantasy drafts. Now, the next couple of guys I want to talk about, I didn't list them on this episode, but I do want to get them in. It's Jalen Polk and Demario Douglas for the New England Patriots. Now, Polk, a rookie, he might not see work in the beginning of the season. I think Douglas is going to play out of that slot. He could see some production in the beginning of the year, especially in PPR leagues. I think he's a sleeper candidate. And maybe at the end of the year, with Drake May coming in later in the season, you might see some Jalen Polk. Those are guys I don't mind taking dart throws on. But in that New England offense, it's probably not going to be any serious production, but guys that I wouldn't mind taking a stab at with Demario Douglas in the beginning of the season and Jalen Polk potentially at the end of the year breaking out. But those are my 5 sleeper wide receivers. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're drafting them in your fantasy football drafts or if you're leaving them for your league mates because these guys are complete bums. Let me know. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more fantasy football content. That's going to wrap it up here. We'll see you guys next week with another episode of The Fantasy Birds.